Have you ever heard of the 70-30 rule in coaching? What I'm going to share about today is going to help you close more deals and serve your clients at a much higher level. Tune in through the end of the episode. I'm Justin Janowski, and this is the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast. And I remember launching my first two coaching businesses to very little results. The first time I had one client and then I went out of business. 3 years later, I tried again. I got 3 clients and I went out of business. 3 years after that, I launched Faith to Influence and did $250,000 in revenue the first year. All glory to God. He provided for me in such meaningful ways. And between the second and the third attempt, I learned how to be an entrepreneur. I learned how to sell. I learned how to build a real business, and it made all the difference. This podcast, the Sales Strategies for Christian Coaches podcast, is designed to help you master high integrity strategies around sales and marketing that can actually help you succeed in business while honoring God and honoring your clients along the way. Thanks for joining me today. I want to talk today about the 70-30 rule in coaching. Some people I know talk about this as more of an 80-20 rule. It's about how you actually show up in a conversation with the other person and how much of the time you're talking versus how much of the time the other person is talking in a coaching or sales conversation. The idea behind the 70-30 rule is that your prospect on a sales call or your client in a coaching conversation should do 70% of the talking and you should do 30% of the talking. We recently had Brian Williams and Jonathan Armel speak to our audience at our conference. They also recorded a podcast episode with me a while back that you may engage with here on the podcast as well. And I think that they said 80-20. They really want you to be talking even less as the coach or the salesperson. And these guys are mastery level coaches. Here's a little side bonus note before I get into how to talk only 30 or even 20% of the time and have success. I was running a sales school class for our clients today, and we were having a conversation about finding the language your audience is looking for. And if you go to Google and you start typing in questions that you think your ideal client is typing into Google and looking for, the cool thing that Google does is they list underneath the answer to the question. In the first few search results, they list 5 more questions. And they say, people also ask, and they have the exact language that people who type in the question you just gave are also typing in so that you can figure out what your ideal client is actually searching for. And what is the 70-30 rule in coaching? Is exactly what Google says some of my clients are typing in. And so that's one of the reasons I want to bring this episode to you so that you could have clarity on what this is if that's what you're already searching for. You could use the same strategy to answer the questions that your clients are already asking. The initial prompt I said was, how do I make more sales as a Christian coach? That's something I thought my clients might type into Google, and Google spit out 5 more things that my clients who type that question also are typing into Google. Really good information there. Now, the idea behind this concept, of course, is that the person who is talking is usually the person who is, if you do this well, receiving. And the person asking the questions is the one who is leading the conversation. And so in a sales conversation, I want to take some of the pressure off of you. I think some people imagine that when they get on a sales call, they have to teach and preach and pitch and have all kinds of interesting things to say. And you really don't. You don't have to have that much to say. You don't need to have this amazing pitch. The sales conversation doesn't have to be about you or your resume at all. If you're running a sales conversation the right way and you're doing it well, you should be asking questions and then taking notes as the other person is sharing, giving them the floor to speak and share and process. And if you're doing this really well, you're not just accepting the surface level answer as the end of the response to your question, but you're digging a little bit deeper. One of my mentors used to say, it's a few layers below the surface. That's where the emotion is. That's where the juice is in the conversation, is a few layers below the surface. And so I learned not just to ask the question, but then to ask why. Why is that so important to you? To say things like, tell me more about that. How long has that been going on? How did that make you feel? Is that true? As you share that right now, how is it making you feel? And these kinds of questions can drive the conversation to a deeper place. How long have you been trying to solve that problem? What's the consequence of not solving that problem for another 6 months? What would happen if you did solve that problem? Who would that affect besides you? How would that feel? And you can imagine when you're asking good questions that are open, that you don't know the answer to, that the other person is going to the place that they're meant to go in this conversation, and you are guiding them and leading the conversation more than you're choosing the destination. This is another great tip that I received from Brian and Jonathan, great mastery level coaches who we're happy to be partnering with. In sales conversations, though, it takes pressure off of you for you to simply be a coach, for you to simply ask questions and help the other person get clear on where they're at, where they're going, what problems they need to solve, help them commit to solving those problems by asking good and powerful questions. And so if you're seeking to become better at sales, you don't need to learn one-liners. You don't need to have an amazing way of presenting and pitching yourself and your offer the entire call. Yeah, that's a part of it, but it's 10% at the very end of the call. For the first 90%, it's really about you asking great questions and helping people find their own answers, their own clarity. And the same thing, of course, is true in a coaching call when somebody's already our client. Can you be brave and bold enough to ask great questions and to help people find clarity and truth through the questions that you are asking? To become great at sales, to become great at coaching, become great at asking questions, become curious. Take on the character of a curious person. Your curiosity, your presence with the person that you're with in a sales or coaching conversation will be an absolute gift to them. Most people never experience full presence listening. For me to keep my mind present, because I think I've got a little bit of ADD and I want to jump all over the place and think ahead and all those things, I take notes. I have a journal and pen in front of me at all times so that as I'm asking questions in the conversation, I can be writing notes with great attentiveness. It helps me stay present. It helps me stay focused. And then it helps me prepare to ask the next great question. More to come on this, of course. If you want to learn about some of the questions you can ask in a sales conversation, I want to give you our 10-step sales process for free. It's going to be a guide on how to hold a great conversation and what kinds of questions to ask when in the conversation to ultimately make it as easy as possible for the right people to say yes. You can grab that 10-step sales process for free at www.goodsalespdf.com. I hope it's helpful and a blessing to you. Thanks for joining me today. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you again soon.